Your camera's lens is your viewer's window into whatever world you choose to show them. When it comes to shooting, you got a couple options. You can shoot it straight, or you can get creative. In this episode, I'll challenge you to see the things you shoot from a new perspective. We're back behind the lens to talk about creative camera work. Creative shooting requires creative thinking and creative camera positioning. You need to be selective to show your viewers unique perspectives. In this episode, I'll share 5 shooting tips from my own experience to help you get creative with your camera. So if you're ready, let's take 5. Tip number 1, look up, look down, look all around. Change the feel of your shot by changing the height of your camera. A lot of shooters, even professionals, make the mistake of shooting everything from eye level. To be a better camera person, you need to learn to see the world from a different perspective. And that starts with getting the camera off your shoulder. Shooting some shots from eye level is fine, but the shots you shoot will look a lot more interesting if you get the camera up high or down low. Shooting from these dramatic perspectives lets you shoot shots that will set your work apart from conventional straight shooters out there. Instead of shooting from the shoulder, head to higher ground. Climb a ladder, get up on a roof, whatever you have to do to get a new look at the landscape. Just be careful to be safe so nothing happens to you or your gear. Getting down low can be just as dramatic and a lot less dangerous. You might get your pants dirty, but you won't have to worry about falling down. The principle is to put your camera into positions that give people perspectives they wouldn't ordinarily see. Getting your camera off your shoulder and shooting from creative positions will add a whole new dimension to your productions. They'll feel bigger, more produced, and they'll definitely be more interesting. Tip number 2, tilt it. Sometimes it helps to rock as you roll. Most of the time, shooters are careful to keep their shots as level as possible, but you can add interest by occasionally tilting your camera so it's not level. These sideways shots are called canted or Dutch angles. I like to use a slanted angle like this in combination with a low camera position when I shoot custom cars or motorcycles like this one. It just looks cool, especially when you rock the camera to the side as you roll. Perry uses a lot of canted angles in his production notes episodes. It keeps things interesting and it adds to the casual, quirky feel of his show. Don't tip your camera too far to the side. Anything beyond 45 degrees or so is probably too much. Often a subtle slant is more than enough to create the cool effect you're looking for. Shooting handheld canted angles is pretty easy. You just tilt the camera. But shooting slanted shots from a tripod requires some special tools. Most tripods aren't designed to tilt the camera sideways. Here at Juice, we use a high-quality photo tripod for our slanted static shots. The photo tripod lets us rock the camera into pretty much any position that we want. Another option is to mount your camera sideways on your video tripod. This lets you tilt the shot from side to side instead of up and down. Tip number 3, distort the distance. Your lens lets you compress or expand distances. To shoot advanced video, you need to understand the power your camera's zoom lens has to affect the look of a shot. This is something that can't be seen with your naked eye or with a camera that has a lens with a fixed focal length. To demonstrate, let's look at 3 shots of the same subject in the same location. My goal here is to shoot a head and shoulders shot of my subject, so my guy will be the same size in all 3 shots. What I want you to notice is how the background changes based on my camera position and lens setting. We'll start by shooting with a wide-angle lens setting in a close camera position, just a couple feet from his face. Let's look at the background and make some notes. You'll notice that you see a lot of the background. We see sky at the top of the frame, and trees, and even the end of the building on the far right side. Note the apparent distance of the subject from his background too. You can tell he's all the way across the street by looking at the shot. Okay, now let's reposition and reframe the shot. Here the camera's about 8 to 10 feet from the subject, and my lens is somewhere near the middle of my optical zoom range. I'll frame him the same way from the chest up, and let's take a look again. Notice how much less of the background you can see now, and how much closer it appears to be to the subject. Remember, the subject hasn't moved. All we're doing is repositioning the camera and changing our lens setting from wide angle towards telephoto. Now let's move the camera back even farther, somewhere around 20 or 25 feet from the subject. And we'll reframe, this time using a long telephoto setting to compose the shot. Now look at the background. You see a whole lot less of it, and what you do see seems to be closer, larger, and it even starts to fall slightly soft of focus. What a difference. For the record, at the moment we're not talking about depth of field. We're simply making observations about how wide angle and telephoto lens settings can compress or expand the apparent distance between objects and how it impacts the field of view of your shot. Now that you know this, use it to take more control over the shots you compose. By changing your camera position and your lens setting, you can drastically affect the look of your shots. This is a great tip for those of you who are trying to shoot on a small set, by the way. You may not need a bigger wall or a bigger background if you can move your camera back and zoom in. Tip number 4, create the illusion of depth. Creative composition can add a new dimension to your shots. Now that you're thinking about backgrounds, consider this. As a creative shooter, you should seek to compose shots that help to add the illusion of depth to the flat screen. There are a couple ways you can do this. Shooting your subject flat against a wall doesn't help to add a lot of depth. Instead, let's reposition to alter the angle of approach and shoot so it goes off into the distance. Want to add interest to your shots? Don't settle for shooting your subjects against flat surfaces. Look for diagonal and receding lines to add the illusion of depth. Another way to add depth and dimension is to include objects on multiple focal planes. Most shooters concentrate on the midground of the shot, looking at the subject. Better shooters also pay attention to the background, but most videographers ignore the foreground. Foreground framing is something that's regularly used by filmmakers, and you can use it to add cinematic flair to your shots. You might find existing objects that work well, like the branch of a tree, or you may need to add them to the environment to get the look you like. Either way, the result is a more compelling composition. Keep your eye out for frames that you can shoot through. This may be the V of a tree, a rock formation, or the wheel of a motorcycle. Look to add creativity to your compositions by developing an eye for angles, watching for shoot-through shapes, and by finding objects you can frame in the foreground. Tip number 5, set selective focus. Set sharpness and softness selectively in your shots. No discussion of creative camera work would be complete without a section on selective focus. Artsy shots often have some elements in sharp focus while others fall soft. Here's what you need to know about focusing selectively. Depth of field is the range of area in your shot that is in sharp focus. A wide depth of field has objects in focus over a broad area. A narrow or shallow depth of field shrinks the range within which things will stay sharp. To focus selectively, you need to know how to manipulate the depth of field of your shots. This means getting to know your camera's controls, particularly the aperture and focal settings. In bright situations, like when you're shooting outside on a sunny day, it's easy to keep things in focus. Why? Because a bright situation requires you to close down your aperture to expose the scene properly. Closing down to a small lens opening broadens the range within which things will stay sharp. Small iris, large depth of field. Opening up the lens to a larger or wider aperture results in a shallower depth of field. If you've ever shot video in a dark room, you'll notice that it's hard to maintain focus. That's because you have to open your lens to let in more light. And as you open your iris, the depth of field narrows. In order to shrink the depth of field outside on a bright day or under studio lights, you need to cut the amount of light entering the lens so you can open your iris. One way to do this is by adding a neutral density filter. Most high-end cameras have built-in ND filters, but you can also get neutral density filters that screw onto the front of your lens or that slide into a matte box that attaches to the front of the lens. The neutral density filter cuts the amount of light entering the lens and allows you to open your iris to expose the scene properly with a shallower depth of field. Now you can do this technically with a wide-angle lens setting and a close camera position, but the effect is a lot more dramatic when you pull the camera back and use a telephoto setting. Remember, lens compression from tip number 3. It's also easier to get a dramatic look if your subject is farther from the background. Once you've established this narrow range of focus, you can move it by adjusting your focal setting. As you rotate the focus ring, you can move that band of focus closer to or farther from the lens. Moving this narrow focal band so that a soft object in the shot becomes sharp as a sharp object in the shot falls out of focus is called a rack focus. Pulling your focus from one person or object to another is a great way to direct the attention of your viewers and add professionalism to your productions. For the record, manipulating depth of field has nothing to do with the format you shoot on. It's got nothing to do with DV versus HD or whatever. It's all about the lens and aperture settings. Now, it does happen to be true that professional cameras tend to have larger lenses that give you a broader range and more control over your aperture than the tiny consumer camera you might have. That's why it's hard to throw things out of focus with your little consumer cam. There you go, 5 tips for creative camera work. Number 1, look up, look down, look all around. Number 2, tilt it. Number 3, distort the distance. Number 4, create the illusion of depth. And number 5, set selective focus. I've given you the tips, but it's up to you to put these principles to practice in your productions. There's no magic formula to follow to shoot like a pro. To become an advanced shooter, you need to know the basics of composition, understand your camera's controls and the impact they can have on the look of your shots, and you need to get out and shoot a lot of video. So until next time, fire up your camera and start looking at your world from a new point of view.